Amazing audio feed here. All right. Is there anybody unready to proceed?
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm MTA Chair and CEO Jano Lieber. I'm here with MTA Chief Safety and Security Officer Pat Warren, who is leading the preparations for the approaching storm. We're coming to you from the MTA Situation Room, which has been activated and is going to be staffed 24/7 as we're preparing for what looks to be a major storm event. If you've been following the forecast, you know that things have been changing this afternoon, but the meteorologists seem to be saying that there's going to be a very significant weather event tonight. They're calling for heavy rain starting tonight, up to an inch an hour at worst. We know what impact that has in New York, and it looks like it's going to last all day tomorrow and even into the weekend. Long Island and southern Connecticut could get hit with as much as 6 inches by the time all is said and done. This is a serious storm, and we are taking it very seriously. We have a detailed plan in place to protect our network and to deliver safe service throughout the storm. We will be running. There may be impacts to service, but our plan is to run service everywhere the MTA operates. Now, the crews from Long Island Railroad, Metro North, New York City Transit, and MTA Bridges and Tunnels have been deployed at strategic locations so they can respond quickly to whatever happens. Of course, flash flooding, we all know, is unpredictable. We never seem to be able to pinpoint where it's going to take place. But we have equipment that makes sure that we're ready to deal with the consequences. We have pump trains that are being deployed throughout the system. We're installing the drain covers. We're battening down the hatches, literally. We check all the valves. We make sure that all the drains are working. We have an established protocol for this, and every aspect of it is being deployed. We have spent billions since Hurricane Sandy to protect the most vulnerable stations, most of them along the coastline, but we are preparing everywhere throughout the system. But no matter what we do, there is going to be water in the subway system. We all know that gravity is going to do its thing. We have 472 stations, and just because of topography and, of course, that localized intense rain and flash flooding, there is going to be water in some of our facilities. It is inevitable. The good news is the system is designed to take water and to pump it out in huge amounts. We saw that back with Hurricane Ida about 2 years ago. We saw it as recently as that Times Square water main break, where we were able to operate service within a matter of hours. Nevertheless, there are some localized constraints that could have impacts. That mostly has to do with the capacity of the city's storm sewer system, which sometimes in a local area does get overwhelmed. But as I said, we are planning to operate service, particularly our buses. The bus network is prepared to pick up the slack, and New Yorkers know that when the weather gets rough, the bus drivers keep going. That stands for all of our MTA employees who will be working through the night and getting ready for this event, but especially hats off to the bus drivers who always seem to keep rolling and keep the city moving. We're closely monitoring the different bus routes, especially in areas where we know that there can be localized flooding, but we're going to have extra buses on standby in case we need to support additional service if there are, for example, impacts to the rail system. We want to be able to have buses to step up in that instance. All of the bus facilities, again, themselves are having their drains checked and having all the roofs checked, and emergency generators are at the ready for this event. Commuter railroads. Commuter railroads will have crews pre-positioned with all of the equipment on hand to manage a weather event of this kind. Chainsaws for down trees. There are always down trees that come onto the tracks. Supplies for replacing the damaged utility poles. Again, a frequent occurrence in these types of weather scenarios. Making sure that all the crossing gates at the grade crossings are functioning, and so on. We are going to be ready on the commuter railroads as well. Long Island Railroad specifically is going to have extra coverage in all departments and at the Jamaica Control Center, the Operations Center, and they're going to be staffing it throughout the night and throughout this event. And they will be coordinating with the Coast Guard because there are some areas where there are joint decisions about the safety of certain rights-of-way which are close to the coast. And they may, for example, be closing bridges in some areas, especially in the Long Beach area. That's going to be a game time decision jointly with the Coast Guard. As for the bridges and tunnels, we're monitoring the wind conditions and we will implement traffic and speed conditions where warranted. We always do that, and we're planning for that as well. I need to thank our incredible MTA workforce. They rise to the occasion whenever these weather events take place. We know that they're happening more frequently in the era of climate change, but we couldn't manage through the way that we do without our incredible workforce. So I want to thank them in advance. Listen, if you have to be out in the transit system tonight and tomorrow, please use extra caution. Please do consult the weather forecast, listen to the radio, watch television, check the news. Try to be aware of what the conditions may be in your area. As I said, we expect to be operating, and we're going to try to make sure that we provide full service, but we want everybody to be aware of conditions as they unfold. Check the social media that the MTA uses, all the social media outlets. We have our MTA apps and our MTA website, and the digital screens in our stations. All of them will be providing up-to-date information on conditions so that New Yorkers can know how best to muddle through what looks like a very serious weather condition. With that, I will be happy to take your questions, and Colonel Warren, if you would join me, we'll answer any specific questions that may come up.
All right, who's got a question? Chris Jose right there, WNBC. Chris.
When it comes to with the coordination with the Coast Guard, exactly does that entail between MTA, LIRR, and the Coast Guard?
Well, there are established protocols. I mean, obviously, in certain conditions, when a bridge is overwhelmed with water or there are wind conditions, it has to be closed. That has impacts to navigation, and so obviously, navigation on our waterways is a matter of federal regulation. So decisions that impact on navigation on the water have to be jointly made with the Coast Guard, which is the agency of jurisdiction there.
Anybody else? Evan Simko-Bednarski from the Daily News.
Yep.
Hey, Jenna. Last time there was a significant amount of rainfall, there were some washouts in Metro North. Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing to prepare for the day after?
Well, that's a good point. In the era of climate change, we have had to get pretty experienced in dealing with washouts, especially on the Hudson line, which is so close to the Hudson River. And in many areas, that Hudson line is at the bottom of a very steep embankment or even a cliff. So we actually, not in addition to pre-positioning equipment, we have contractors on standby that we have experience working with when we have these washouts to quickly respond and restore the track. So we don't have any specific predictions of that, but the preparations to have those contractors move quickly in that event have been made.
All right, Nolan Hicks from the Post. Nolan?
Yeah, how much does a storm like this cost?
Millions, Nolan, but I don't want to in advance project exactly how much it costs. What we will give you is retrospective of what Ida, for example, cost, but more recently what other slightly smaller storms actually did in terms of damage and recovery costs.
You guys have been hammering on sort of this idea that climate change means there's more of these storms, they last longer, they do more damage than they used to. I'm wondering if there's some tally as to the amount of storm damage done, say, 20 or 30 years ago, adjusted for inflation, versus what you see now. Is there some way to quantify it?
Question that I'll need a little time to answer, but happy to do it. I mean, listen, our views of climate change are not, I am not an expert, but trying to reflect what is consensus among the professionals who work with that issue and have responded analytically to the storm events that we've seen recently.
All right, anybody else? Great, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.